This is Series 3 of Away, a podcast for anyone exploring 12-step sobriety. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. Hello, hello, hello. It is crazy storming out by my house. It is literally shaking my little townhouse because we're right on the water, which, you know, it's a part of on the water living. Maybe you can even hear it. It's like pouring and the winds are crazy. I just had one of the best commutes home I've ever had. There was a young guy practicing the ukulele that he'd just taken up on the train, but he was very talented. He'd taken it up and was already good. And he started singing basically for the car because when another guy asked him to play a song, and they just sort of started jamming a little bit. And then I asked to take a picture of him to send to my mom because she's a ukulele player and she likes jazz guitar. She was originally a pianist. And he's also a New York City firefighter, so it was just loads of fun, and other people got involved, and it was one of those moments where, like, I put down my phone and I took off my headphones, which is usually what I do on the train, but his confidence, and he's like a kid. I mean, he was like 19 years old, 20 years old, been a firefighter for a year. His confidence, or whatever it was kind of inspiring, you know? Like, at that age, I could never have done something like that, at least not with many, many drinks in me. And even then, karaoke was hard. I was just impressed. I was impressed by his confidence and his spirit. I thought it was very cool. And I did sing along a little to Stand By Me, and then I taught him Oh Hanukkah, because he'd never heard it. Great song. And then, I don't know what else. Oh, you know, I said something about, like, isn't this so great? Because a bunch of us were kind of getting into it, and we need more of this in the world right now, just coming together over something like music. And he played, as I was getting off, some Bob Marley. It was just fun. I'm sure there's some kind of privilege in there, like feeling like you can even do that in public on the train without worrying about offending other people. But also it was just a nice moment, so I don't know, you know. Anyway, with no solid segue, we're moving on to step 8 in the 12 and 12. And truth be told, I like steps 8 and 9, not as much as I like steps 6 and 7, but I like steps 8 and 9. I think they're important, not necessarily in the same way or on the same, not scale, but whatever. I don't think there's the urgency that is portrayed in the big book or the 12 and 12. But again, the people writing it, there was a different kind of urgency, and there was a zealotry. So, anywho. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So willing is really key there. But here's my extra long rephrase of this step that I would say to any sponsee. Made a list of as many people as we could remember at this point in our sobriety to whom we should probably apologize. Then organize the list into 3 columns. The yes column. Apologies I am happy to make, the sooner the better. The maybe column. Apologies I am hesitant about because I'm not sure the apology is owed, or I know it's owed, but he or she owes me one too, or it's owed, but now is just not the right time for the other person, for me. Column 3, the never column. No fucking way will I ever apologize to that scumbag. You sponsor the one who told me I harmed this person, and as far as I'm concerned, that person deserved all of it. And I don't even really think I harmed them, but I'll put them in the never column. Or just no, I won't apologize. So, okay, let's read. Steps 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relationships. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. Okay, so step 8, we sorta start with steps 4 and 5. Sorta. Those steps 4 and 5, in my opinion, my humble opinion, should not necessarily have been about the harm you did to others as much as the real or perceived harm to you. Yes, the acknowledgement that you played a role is important, and that is the foundation of step 8. So you may find that some of the people you mention or talk about on step 4 do deserve apologies, especially if you did have resentment or anger and the other person didn't know why, I mean, maybe they did know why, and that person might be in your never column, but I'm just saying it's a foundation. But they're not one and the same, and I think a lot of people come at this and think they are. But in step 4, we're looking at ourselves more, and now we're looking at our behaviors more. Not just the inner workings, but how that affected the world around us. And that last sentence, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. It's important to read that. Best possible relationship. Best possible relationship and besties are not the same thing. The best possible relationship may be just being civil, being polite. So don't mistake the two. You don't have to be best friends with everybody. Ever. I mean, that's just true always. Reading. Let's skip down the page a little. As I've just said, to a degree, he or she has already done this when taking moral inventory. But now the time has come when he ought to redouble his efforts to see how many people he has hurt, and in what ways. This reopening of emotional wounds, some old, some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will at first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. Okay, so I think in 2019, most of us know, and if we don't, we should know, that this sort of work, the mining of emotions, of feelings, of old wounds, is actually never pointless. It's pretty important to the healing process. We know that the expression of pain in whatever way is healthy. We know that keeping it all clamped up can lead to mental and physical health problems. I do think that this idea that, keep it all inside is still sadly true for some men, depending on what their cultural background is. This, be strong, emotion is weakness. And it's just not weak to admit to pain, to feel pain, and to apologize for wrongdoings. None of those things are ever weak. And it's not just a platitude. It really is strength to be able to say those things out loud because it's uncomfortable. That's real strength. And in fact, I think men who are able to do it, that separates you from the bad guys. That ability to feel, understand, and express emotions and apologize when you're wrong will set you apart as a quote-unquote more manly man. Okay. Moving on to the next page. Reading. These obstacles, however, are very real. The first, and one of the most difficult, has to do with forgiveness. The moment we ponder a twisted or broken relationship with another person, our emotions go on the defensive. To escape looking at the wrongs we have done another, we resentfully focus on the wrong he has done to us. This is especially true if he was, in fact, behaved badly at all. Triumphantly, we seize upon his misbehavior as the perfect excuse for minimizing or forgetting our own. Skipping down. If we are now about to ask forgiveness for ourselves, why shouldn't we start out by forgiving them, one and all? When listing the people we have harmed, most of us hit another solid obstacle. We got a pretty severe shock when we realized that we were preparing to make a face-to-face admission of our wretched conduct to those we had hurt. So, I think this page kind of explains why I say start with those 3 columns. Sharpen your apologetic teeth on the easy ones, the ones you know you owe. It doesn't mean they're easy to do, but it's easier for you to let down your pride a little, perhaps. Get comfortable with the discomfort of an apology with the people who don't make you feel defensive, who bear no responsibility in the situation. And I think we all know, don't we, that forgiveness feels good. It's a way of letting go of some of our own pain. Sometimes it's the only closure you'll ever have. I don't really believe there's such a thing as closure. But if you do and you're seeking it, I think forgiveness is one way. I mean, you see the parents of murdered children forgiving the murderer, and it's not for the murderer, it's for themselves. So I think this is why I always say you'll be surprised as time goes by when some of the column 3, the nevers, move into the column 2 and even the column 1. Because so what if the other person sucks? Really, like that's his bad behavior. And his bad behavior or her bad behavior doesn't actually negate your bad behavior. Your bad behavior was still your bad behavior. Now, of course, in situations where you have identified yourself as a victim entirely, like abuse, rape, assault, no apology is owed ever except to yourself for ever thinking it was your fault. Not for drinking and then being assaulted, right? That's not, you bear no responsibility. You should be able to have gotten drunk without being raped. So you owe yourself an apology if you at any point after that felt ashamed of yourself or blamed yourself for something that was completely out of your control. You may never choose to forgive your abuser. I haven't forgiven mine. But pain that runs that deep will take time to uncover, and it'll take time to recover from it. And I think forgiveness comes in many forms. That's a hard one. You're not forgiving the person for the victimization, for the abuse, but you're forgiving him or her. You know, I don't know. I mean, this is a tough one for me because I haven't reached that point yet. I'll say this. I haven't forgiven any of the truly bad actors in my life. But I have, with time, healed and been able to let go of the righteous anger I felt. And I have been able to feel pain and sadness instead of just anger. And I have healed, and they no longer dominate my thinking. It comes, but Just like when you lose a loved one, time heals. It really does. And I know sometimes that's hard to believe in the moment. My dog is obsessively licking her paws from seasonal allergies, and she's about to get in trouble because it gets obsessive. You know how we don't like obsessive. Okay. So that's my take on that page. Next page, which I think is 79. Why we cried. Shouldn't bygones be bygones? Why do we have to think of these people at all? These were some of the ways in which fear conspired with pride to hinder our making a list of all the people we had harmed. Some of us, though, tripped over a very different snag. We clung to the claim that when drinking, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. Our families didn't suffer because we always paid the bills, seldom drank at home. Our business associates didn't suffer because we were usually on the job. Our reputations hadn't suffered because we were certain few knew of our drinking. Those who did would sometimes assure us that, after all, a lively bender was only a good man's fault. What real harm, therefore, had we done? No more, surely, than we could easily mend with a few casual apologies. This attitude, of course, is the end result of a purposeful forgetting. It is an attitude which can only be changed by deep and honest search of our motives and actions, though in some cases we cannot make restitution at all. And in some cases, action ought to be deferred. We should nevertheless make an accurate and really exhaustive survey of our past life as it has affected other people. So, I have sort of a slightly judgmental view or opinion here. That is, if you're on step 8, supposedly, and you still don't think your drinking had an effect on others, then just stop doing the steps for now. I'm not saying drink. I'm not saying don't stay sober. Just maybe take a step back from the steps. It is delusional, literally delusional, to think that your drinking or using had no effect on others. If your use was bad enough, whatever bad looks like in your life, bad enough to bring you into AA or rehab or whatever, then it has already affected other people. Physically, it may only have been hurting you, although I would argue if you caused a lot of emotional distress to others, it may very well have affected their physical health too. But honestly, if you still believe to your core that it never had an effect on anyone else, stay sober, but chill with the steps. You do have time to do this. There's no deadline. Just stay sober and let time help you see more clearly. Look, an effect on another person isn't always clear. Doesn't necessarily mean you harmed them in a clear way. Maybe it's as simple as oversleeping on a lot of mornings and the kids didn't get to school on time. Seems little. It may be little to them too. But you don't know until you start a conversation about it. And kids display the effects of this in a lot of different ways, right? Either they become the perfect child because they feel unsafe and they feel like they have to protect you. But, for parents, I think it's really important to look at the effects that a child may not even understand him or herself. I know that's hard. I feel it with my cats, that I wasn't the best cat mom when I was drinking, because I'd stay out all night and I wouldn't come home and do their litter and they wouldn't eat for 24 hours. If I feel that with cats, I can only imagine the depths that a parent feels that. A parent who's acknowledging that his or her behavior had an effect on people around them. So, I beg of you to think about that. Bottom of the page. Very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they may actually have given our emotions violent twists, which have since discolored our personalities. So I think, simply put, how can we be better people if we don't know what's wrong and what we've done wrong? Reading. While the purpose of making restitution to others is paramount, it is equally necessary that we extricate from an examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties that we can. Since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. So yes, a defective relationship with others, but also with yourself. This is going to help with both of those things. Those negative thoughts you have, like working on relationships with others, also means working on the relationship with yourself. And that's what we were doing in 6 and 7, was trying to rewire that thinking. If you do spend some really quality time considering it, you will see what I mean. Okay, move on. We might next ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. What kinds of harm do people do to one another anyway? To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it the result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotion, or spiritual damage to people. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. We really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful. So spending the time thinking about this, if you're really at step 8 or you need to explore further, you're probably going to see harm can manifest in very varying ways. For example, I gave the example of how it might affect your children, but if you're causing your spouse, a sibling, a parent to worry about you too often, maybe without even knowing it themselves, they didn't feel safe. They felt afraid. The big harms, I think, are easy to see, and you may not have any glaring ones like cheating or stealing, literally. But if you apply those on like an emotional basis, can you see that you might have stolen feelings of safety, love, peace of mind to people you love? Like, those are real harms that have a real effect on the relationship, on the individual person who's suffering through them. So there's a lot more to look at than, cheating and stealing and the outward stuff. And while that is all important to apologize for, and those people are probably going to be on your yes list, there's some more subtle harms that should also be on your yes list. Or your maybe list, because maybe they deserved it. But did they? Or were they human? Or were they reacting to you? Without a conversation, which often begins with an apology, you'll never know. Okay, next page. Such gross misbehavior is not by any means a full catalog of the harms we do. Let us think of some of the subtler ones, which can sometimes be quite as damaging. Suppose that in your family lives we happen to be miserly, irresponsible, callous, or cold. Suppose that we are irritable, critical, impatient, and humorless. Suppose we lavish attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. The paragraph goes on like that. When we take such personality traits as these into shop, office, and the society of our fellows, they can do damage almost as extensive as we have caused at home. Okay. Yes, right. That's all right. And that is not to say that being irritable or feeling self-pity sometimes is not okay. Of course it's okay. It's human. Families are annoying. Bosses too. You are human. This is not, I repeat, not an exercise in how to please all your friends and family all the time. And maybe you are just a grouchy person. Like, that's okay too. You're a nihilist. I mean, I'm kind of a nihilist. You know, you're a cynic. I'm kind of a cynic. Getting sober doesn't mean you have to turn into like a doe-eyed, everything is always cool man person. You know, just look at the grouchiness that maybe came from the drinking or the hangover or the obsession. That's what we want to examine. What's behind that? How much of it is fueled by that and how much of it is just your personality? I mean, you're not going to get rid of your personality, but like, were you grouchier? Were you more irritable? Were there times you think your irritability was entirely because of drinking, hangover, obsession, whatever? Were you more impatient than you normally would be? Like, those are changeable. I'm not saying you're ever going to change the fact that you're an impatient person, though being a patient person does make life much better. I was so impatient when I was drinking, and now it's like I do kind of play it as it lays, and life is easier. I'm not always worked up all the time. But I do have an edge with taking Lexapro. Like, if you're not willing to take meds and you need them, or, you know, your mental health is basically okay and you don't feel like you need them, I feel like the fact that I needed medication and found the right one actually gives me a little bit of an edge. So I don't want to, like, be holier than thou that, like, I got this. Because I don't got this. I'm pretty sure without Lexapro, I don't got this. You don't need a pink cloud. You don't need to be big smiles all the time, like some of my husband's group members. Jesus. Like, everything is not perfect all the time. Jesus didn't make your life perfect, right? I mean, maybe he helps your life, and that's awesome for you. But this, like, weird cult-like thing really bugs me. Like, oh, everything is happy, and he's forgiven everything. Like, oh, my God. Life is hard. Life is hard. And I totally feel like life is still going to be hard when you're sober. And being real about that is pretty important. Anyway, back to step 8. A little further down the page 81. To put a finger on the nearby and most deeply damaged ones shouldn't be hard to do. Then, as year by year, we walk back through our lives as far as memory will reach, we shall be bound to construct a long list of people who have, to some extent or other, been affected. That doesn't mean hugely affected. We should, of course, ponder and weigh each instance carefully. We shall want to hold ourselves to the course of admitting the things we have done, meanwhile forgiving the wrongs done us, real or fancied. We should avoid extreme judgments both of ourselves and of others involved. We must not exaggerate our defects or theirs. Wow, that's really forward. A quiet, objective view will be our steadfast aim. And then skip that last paragraph, because the paragraph I just read is damn good. It really is. Last paragraph's fine, but totally unnecessary. That paragraph was kind of perfect. And on a perfect paragraph, I shall end this imperfect episode of an imperfect podcast. I don't know what episode it is. Maybe 11 or 12, 11. I hope, as always, that this helps someone, more than one person, just one person. I do this as much for me as for anyone else. Reminds me to keep connected in my own way, because there isn't only one way, but I promise there is a way.